We have several questions before us. I'll just summarize what the questions would be. One would be in terms of anticipation, meditation, japa. We'll just go into that a little more. Another question is about the value of observation in nature all around us, and can it teach us any lessons? Of course, the obvious answer is yes, but we can go into that a little bit more. And then there's another question before us. How, as a spiritual aspirant, I should comment, we're all spiritual aspirants, to discern when to leave an organization. I'll leave it there and go into organization first. Of course, it carries on relationship and so on and so forth, okay. It's no longer satisfying or evolving, rather than patiently staying with it, asking for help from God to show you your own resistances, which are basically causing the internal difficulty. Well, first of all, in the question, there's an acknowledgement that we have an inherent resistance. And I would call it a resistance to change. And yes, if we have that resistance, we cause internal difficulty. Swami Vivekananda in his Raja Yoga gives a wonderful picture. That every new idea is like so many new roads in the brain, so many new avenues carved into the brain. And so he's anticipating what we call neuroplasticity. Every new idea is like a new set of neurons, if you will, in the brain. And the brain is just an instrument. I had a discussion yesterday with somebody, or the other day with somebody who was saying, well, you see, I'm a materialist, and we won't look for any other cause for consciousness, except that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain. So, well, if you take the brain is made from food. And so is there something inherently conscious in food? No. Is there something inherently conscious in all the cells, which are alive, no doubt, in the brain? Well, no, when the life leaves the body, the brain is still there. And the brain is still there attached to the spinal column and so on. So I'm not sure how you can say we get consciousness from unconsciousness. So we have the capacity to observe what is going on in a self-aware way in terms of our thought processing, and also we have the capacity to shift our understanding in such a way that life becomes more joyful. And so instead of thinking that there are obstacles which are put in my way and are insurmountable, and if I'm to overcome them, then I have to change, and I'm not prepared to do that because I feel comfort in systematic routines, habits, then we should not change our habits. No, yes, we should change our habits. The whole of what we call spiritual endeavor, or endeavor in life itself, which has a spiritual basis, would be really to change our habits and make better ones, form better habits, which have the facility to get around obstacles. And so if the chief obstacle is seen to be our unwillingness to shift, that causes us a resistance to change, then we have to acknowledge that first of all, which is good. And secondly, find a nice way around it. With a kind of sporting attitude, as I say so often. In other words, we don't view it as insurmountable. Nature has provided us with good resources to adapt and adopt. And in that sense, a tree is much more clever in a sense than ourselves, because a tree is just subject to laws of nature and is generous enough to know how to get nutrients from the soil through the roots. And the analogy of a tree is being used widely throughout the whole of spiritual teaching to illustrate life itself, both in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Kathopanishad. We see the analogy of a tree of life. Not only that, but the Mundaka Upanishad gives us a whole tree which is there. And Sanskrit for tree is vriksha. It means the thing that can be cut down. So things change, and even if a tree is cut down, the roots are still there. And in the analogy, the root is our source. There's only one thing. What devotees call God, what philosophy calls Brahman, that one which is infinite, undivided, one without a second. That source that has no space or time in it. So, when to apply in the tree of life, if you will, how to apply an assessment of any organization that we belong to or relationship. Let us take organization first. The trap in an organization is that where it has any group interest or any institutional protectionism or an absence of the fundamental values of spiritual life, namely love, you can reduce everything only to that one thing, love. Now, my colleagues on the interfaith, from the Roman Catholic Christian point of view, may emphasize justice. In fact, many religions will emphasize justice. There's something called a Justice and Peace Commission in virtually every country that I can think of, set up by the Catholic Church. That gets them into a lot of political difficulties very often. And I would say to my colleagues, I don't think that justice and I don't think that peace are the fundamental values. Love is the fundamental value. And in the Christian tradition, you don't have to go very far for it. You just go to St. Paul. And he gives the most beautiful description, probably, that we have ever heard of what is love. The problem with us philosophers is we forget that. We all go into the head and start giving you all the principles. And you see, if there was a competition between the head and the heart, then the heart should win, emotion should win, according to Swami Vivekananda himself. So any organization that traps you, that weakens you, any relationship that weakens you, any piece of work that weakens you should be immediately rejected, because these are obstacles on your path to spiritual development, spiritual evolution. When we talk about a tree, we're talking about something that evolves from a small, tiny seed. You can hardly imagine that a big oak tree can come from a tiny seed. Yet that entire tree is contained there in that little seed. And it knows how to evolve. We can use that language. It is conscious of its evolution. And if we want to see, well, a tree doesn't seem to be conscious because it just sits there, and a stone definitely not, well, then we have misunderstood the whole ingredients of what we call nature. Nature is composed of 3 ingredients, and a stone has a predominance of tamas, and a tree has a mixture of tamas and rajas and sattva. And there's a mix of all of these things, but one or the other may dominate to give us speciation, variation, and all the so-called fragmentation that we have. But we have to get used to understanding that Vedanta tells us there's only one existence. That one existence seems to be fragmented into varieties of things. What is the fragmenter? The mind. It's the mind that we have to control. So we have to make that discernment, and the discernment is based on the various factors, but it boils down to, is this stopping me? Is this preventing me from my evolving spiritual life? Or is it assisting it? Just as if you take a tree, is water assisting its growth? Yes. Is air assisting its growth? Yes. Is nutrients in the soil assisting its growth? Yes. Is sunshine assisting its growth? Yes. And a tree is fully as fully in manifestation of consciousness. I always remember one of my monastic colleagues, Swami Purnananda, being very keen on understanding and saying, every tree, every plant has a spirit in it. And what is that spirit? It's the same fundamental spirit manifested with its experience, coming out as different life forms. So when I think of the spirit religion of Africa, they're very, very keen on understanding the sacredness of every tree, understanding that an ancestral spirit occupies it. When I think of early Christianity in Ireland, there was no conflict between the Celtic religion of the day, which unfortunately we might call paganism, whatever we want to call it. But there was a great, great emphasis on the sanctity of the natural elements, water, trees, and so on. And so we have holy wells, one of which is there near Nivedita House. Holy wells, holy trees, the oak tree, holy, the yew tree, holy. The whole of nature is sacred. Fortunately, this was adopted by Celtic Christianity that had the same kind of ideas. As opposed to nature is bad, nature should be rejected. No, it should be adopted, and we should be able to learn lessons from it. Furthermore, we should be able to see the inherent beauty, which is a reflection of the fundamental beauty which is there. And that is why in spiritual life, it is vitally important to have a strong, keen sense of aesthetics, sense of beauty. Imagine if you paint 1,000 pictures of a natural scene, and you think because of its calmness, its beauty, won't you get calmness and beauty in you? Painting 1,000 pictures of the 1,000 paintings of the face of Buddha, won't you also become inherently meditative, peaceful, and so on? Of course you will. You take on the characteristics of all those values that you take in. That is why big cathedrals are being built. That is why people want to express themselves in art and culture and beauty. Even if you say, I am an atheist, still you have an undeniable sense of beauty. You can't say that the human body, brain, consciousness are all just mechanical things and strip away all the beauty of it. I remember visiting a big church, actually. I think it was a cathedral, a former cathedral, and I think it was in Netherlands. And there it was formerly, of course, in pre-Reformation times, a Catholic cathedral with beautiful carvings on the outside, beautiful paintings, pictures, statues on the inside. And when after the Reformation, it became Protestant. And what did they do? They took away all the statues from the outside. They took all the artistic elements on the inside, and it became more like a courtroom and had the feeling of it because it was dedicated to preaching and nothing else. Nothing to mobilize the imagination and the heart. We all have to be image makers. So when we think of this in spiritual life, let us say japa, meditation, and so on, we bring out this aesthetic value. And when we bring out this aesthetic value, we are prepared to have an infilling of grace, an infilling of grace. The preparation itself should be delightful. What is the preparation? It is all to do with controlling the mind. It is all to do with japa. It is all to do with meditation, more than twice a day. Meditation, not only twice a day, but and for long periods of time if necessary, but whenever you are stirred to do it, such as looking at a tree. What has been described is with a leaf and so on. That is a meditation. It can be reproduced in meditation as an image, an exploration, leading us to the root in us, which is called Brahman. So, patience we have to cultivate patience because look at a tree. It doesn't have any urgency to unfold. It doesn't have any urgency to renew its leaves. It simply wants to unfold. It simply waits. And it's a bit like fishing, you see. Anybody who has ever watched a person fishing or done any fishing will know. I had a friend in Zimbabwe, a very keen fisherman. And at the end of the day, I would say, well, what did you catch? And he would say, nothing, but I'm going again tomorrow. Well, what do you expect to catch? No, I don't expect anything. I just enjoy sitting on the bank of a river with the rod in the water. And if the rod moves and I catch a fish, it's a bonus. You get the idea. So a part of spiritual life is the patience to wait, to do what we can do and then wait. Make our preparation and then wait. And it's that waiting period, which is such a delightful period, where we wait in a sense of glorious anticipation, not anxiety, but a glorious awaiting of an expectation. That is why today is Advent. We begin 4 weeks, first Sunday of the 4 weeks leading up to the Christmas event. So why does religious tradition have that waiting period? It is the expectation. It is like waiting for the sun to rise. We don't say, come on, sun, I'm in a hurry, I have to get to work. We say, no, let it rise. Let me enjoy the glory of the sunrise. Let me see how it peeps over the horizon and spreads its rays out. Let me enjoy that as a symbol of the glory of the divine. So it is the same thing. If we want to if we have an urgency to achieve something in spiritual life, then I suppose we're involved in competitive meditation. I have a cartoon like that, Buddhist monks on a starting line, waiting for meditation. Somebody sent me a wonderful cartoon. I don't know if I shared it with you. A Buddhist monk writing to Buddha, he said, thanks for nothing. See, so it's the nothingness, of course, which is somethingness. It's everything. All right. So let us see. Because it's no longer satisfying or evolving as absolutely correct understanding of it, rather than patiently staying with it, asking for help. Okay, so that's the alternative, is to patiently see if an organization can transform itself, or if people can be more loving. But still, you see, if there's an element of anticipation in that patiently waiting, that's a trap as well. Why don't we just submit everything to the Lord? We're asking God for help to show you show the unresistances. Yes, that's part of the question. Well, the fact that we acknowledge these resistances is the Lord surely revealing it to us, isn't it? Giving us the capacity to highlight it. Oh, look here, look there, look there. We sometimes get a misunderstanding. We're meditating in order to gain divine grace. No, the process of thinking, the thought itself that is flowing, is divine grace. We catch it and understand it well and be thankful for it and allow it to lead us where it will. This requires faith. Faith means things are being looked after. And you may say, but isn't that a kind of resignation? In a sense it is, but it's a healthy resignation. And it's not the extreme of doing nothing. It's not the extreme of just sitting and blanking off. No, not that. It's tuning in sufficiently to divine guidance and grace that comes through, looking for the green lights. That's where our patience comes. Our opening avenues. Yes, hear my child, hear my child, hear my child, hear my child. And going with it. In the Christian prayer, Our Father, you see, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, here with me as well as with you. So let me be an open channel for divine grace to flow, and let me catch it. Let me not insert my own ego, that is my own personal will, on it. So I hope I answered that particular question. And then in terms of then spiritual practice per se, the language of anticipation, the language of disturbance, the language of trying is all non-meditative language. It is all simply saying, it's interpreting spiritual life instead of an evolving thing, an unfolding thing, just removing obstacles, that's all. What is our part in spiritual life? Remove the obstacles. And then again, we make that assessment, what is standing in the way of this expression? The yogic understanding of evolution is unfolding. It's already there. A seed is unfolding and becoming a tree and setting up a cycle where the leaves fall and create fertilizer, as it were, for the root of the tree, along with water, along with the nutrients, along with wind and all the other elements. And new leaves sprout. And so we can't say there's any such thing as death, only transformation. One thing is being transformed into something else. That's the nature of life itself. But there's a root that never changes, if you take that analogy. It is the banyan tree, which is upside down, as it were, roots above and branches below. And what are the leaves in the examples, the scriptural examples? They would be the Vedas, that is, these understandings of truth that falls into two areas. One area is scripture themselves. It is to do with lower kind of knowledge. It's to do with knowledge of the external world and the material internal world as well. What do we mean by internal material world? Well, the mind is also material. We have no argument with materialists about that. Mind is material. And the air in which we breathe is material. And the energy which is being used is also part of material. It's also part of E equals M and so on. But the energy that is there, that is one, is divinely manifested, expressed energy that is there, split up, allowing life, making life, life itself, because it is the manifest aspect of Brahman. It is what Ramakrishna would have called Kali, you see. And Kali is Brahman. There are no two Brahmans, unmanifest and manifest. It is only that the manifest looks as if it is separate, different, with a multitude of things and species and variegations. Why? Because there is an in-between element between the absolute and the relative, where the absolute is not lost, but it is appearing in a fragmented way once the elements of fragmentation are there, namely the cosmic mind is there. Cosmic mind is the fragmenter or creator, if you will. But Brahman is the absolute. We can't catch the absolute and the relative simultaneously. When we catch the absolute, the relative is gone. And when we're involved in the relative, the absolute is gone. And we use this relative world of people and place and events, organizations and relationships as well, and work and activities and so on, to lead us toward the opening, which becomes a totality, as it were. That totality we call the divine, or Brahman. There's a wonderful question and answer sessions that are recorded with Swami Purnananda by unknown people, disciples. And he gives very profound answers. And so I keep this in reserve in case there are no questions. Because if you don't have any questions, other people have questions. One question that is being asked: how can one make the mind one-pointed? How is it relevant to all these questions that are being asked? It's relevant because our difficulty is a scattered mind, scattered attention. We take this world in a serious way. We put ourselves in a juxtaposition against it. We try to find some way of handling it. And if we're handling it from the habitual area, then it'll just be a round of frustration. Frustration means that we are not really getting any sense of fulfillment. We're just going round and round, repeating the same old habits or same old behavioral traits. No, it requires getting out of that. It requires a new direction. In the beginning of spiritual life, we think that prayers will be answered. We think that we are individuals. We think that the divine is outside and separate. We think that we have to be good in order to get some kind of good reward, either here or hereafter. But at some point in time, a revelation will occur, a realization will occur that there must be a totality, that nothing is missing. There's nothing that we should want. It is already waiting for us in the behind the scenes, as it were. And when we realize that, it comes out. In Ramakrishna's examples, because I use Ramakrishna a lot, why? Because he has the most wonderful, vivid, down-to-earth examples. He's comparing it with a mother and a child. As long as the child is busy playing with the toys, the mother leaves it. As soon as the child cries and so on and so forth, runs to the mother attends to it. But why interfere with the child's play? So we are all children playing like this. And our little toys, the only difference between children's toys and adult toys is the one we call, playing with toy dolls or soldiers. The other one is with golf balls. That's the only difference. The most unifying thing in the whole of humanity, just on the human level, is sport. Because sport says we have no political points to prove. I think it's a great disaster that on political grounds sports teams are banned or something like that, personally, because sport is a unifier. Supposing the whole of the UK becomes agnostic or atheistic, pretty much there, then the great enthusiasm for football and allegiance to a football team is very much a part of British life. And why is that? Why is it so appealing? Because we have this inherent delight in sports activities. We don't see it as a threat. Now, if you take it seriously, then you'll become a howling, fanatic fan. You'll be destructive. You'll want to have a fist fight with those who won, and so on. That's how tribalistic sometimes it becomes. But those who really appreciate the sport won't take it like that. Whether you win, whether you lose, the skill of playing. I'm not a big fan of football, but one thing I know, when a player raises their foot, it creates a gap where somebody can put the ball in between. And when you do that, of course, you're taking the non-competitive gap. It's a very useful lesson in life. Take the non-competitive gap. Somebody else is doing it, that's their role. We all have a different role to play in this game. So, how can we make the mind one-pointed? We understand that our difficulty is a scattered mind. Our attention is split up all over the place. It will take a stenographic recording of every thought we had. Let's say in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, we would see a randomness all over the place. Maybe starting off with a theme, and then when we stand back and recall, oh, now that's why people find meditation very difficult. Meditation is difficult for those people who sit, and before they know it, the mind has been gone off here, there, and everywhere. And what should we do about it? Well, watch it. You should simply watch the mind going here, there, everywhere with a little bit of sense of humor. And the wonderful thing, again, referring to Ramakrishna, is such a seasoned meditator. He says, I was sitting in meditation. My mind wandered to Risik's house. Risik is a low-caste person that Ramakrishna, he went to his house, cleaned his toilet and so on and so forth, washed it himself in the dead of night, and dried it with his own long hair. So the point is, he observed, oh, the mind is going here. And that's the important thing. So it's a bit like taking a dog for the walk. You allow the dog to do a little sniffing here and there. You acknowledge it, and then you call it back. So how do we make the mind one-pointed? It's interesting to see what is the answer. So Maharaj, that is Swami Purnananda, says this: the practice of Japam and meditation are the means of concentrating the mind. So what do we mean by that? What is Japam? Is it just a meaningless repetition of things? Well, you can say, you can say success, 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 for example, 100 million times, it won't bring it to you. You can say food, food, food 1,000,000 times. It won't help you if you're hungry. There has to be something more to it. So Japam is taking the sacred name with an element of affection, love, respect, wonder, so that the repetition of it elevates. And when we say elevates, we mean not only elevates the mind, but elevates the mood and elevates the entire physique. You practice that. Now, two ways of doing that. One is in the depths of meditation, preparing an entry. That is like an advent. I'm preparing for some extraordinary encounter. And so I am now deliberately, slowly repeating my mantra, doing japa, mantra, protecting thought against misery, against pain, against difficulties, against temptations, against doubts, against fears. And I'm repeating that because you are the replacement for it. Your glory outshines all these other things. And so it is a mini advent. It is sitting there saying, let me prepare for a deep, profound, joyful encounter. Then the other way is, in your normal, everyday, working, waking life, repeating. That doesn't require a concentration because let us put it this way, the mind knows what the association is with the words. And so that kind of repetition keeps you attuned and has the same effect as protection against fears, doubts, temptations, all of those kinds of things. So constantly repeating it in a habitual way so that the mind itself will continue repeating it almost unconsciously. It says, and meditation. Meditation, what is meditation? Dedicated sitting down in a convenient place, a beautiful place, or anywhere that is convenient, anywhere that induces the mind to a state of peaceful unity. And the process of meditation, leading the mind gently inwards until one thought alone remains, and you experience the bliss or the peace that passes all understanding. Then he says, pranayama, breath control, is also a means. But it's not safe for householders. Why is it not safe for householders? Well, because it is affecting the nervous system. And if the nervous system is not running smoothly because of agitation, difficulties, lack of nutrition even, disturbance, lust, greed, etc. So he goes on to say, pranayama demands strict continence. Otherwise, it may cause diseases. Those who practice pranayama should have nutritious food, pure air, and a suitable place. Imagine breathing stale air, no, pure air. But meditation is not subject to any condition. That means we can meditate anywhere. Meditate in a solitary place, he says. Now, supposing you say, but I have a room and it's not very private and so on. Well, you could surely get up a little earlier where it's dark and private and make that your solitary place. And in any event, when there's noise and disturbance around you, and you allow the mind to lead you into a solitary place itself, you won't hear anything else, by the way. Practicing meditation for an hour or two is not a day, is not enough. Now, out of compassion, we say one or two twice a day you do it. And I also say, don't worry about the time period. Why? Because meditation ultimately is a timeless experience. And when you get out of it, you don't know how much time passed. If you're trying to meditate, you'll be looking at the clock every 5 minutes. The longer you practice, the more your mind will become one pointed toward God. In other words, it's the length of practice. As with anything, if you want to pass an exam, well, you spend much more time on learning the subject. If you want to master a musical instrument, you spend more time on practicing it. If you want to be a top tennis player, then you practice for longer hours. If you take any person who has mastered anything, you ask what is the key to it. Let us say dancing. Let's say ballet dancing or something. You'll see, well, I practice for so many hours a day. Until you get to a point where you feel you may not have to practice, and yet you still practice. All musicians will not abandon practice, even having attained mastery of their instrument. And follow routine with regularity. This regularity, this rhythm, is the key to electrical energy. What is electricity? Is taking all the electrons and pushing them in one direction. As long as they're scattered, then you won't get any electrical force. But once you steer them in a certain direction, you get electricity. Electricity and magnetism so closely related. For this reason, and you're pushing the electrons all in one direction. There's an experiment that if you take an ordinary piece of metal and you take a magnet, and let's say you take some iron and you hammer it, and then you see, as it become magnetic? Yes. After magnetizing it, I should say, it becomes magnetic, and then you hammer it, and the magnetism is gone. Why is the magnetism gone? Because by hammering it, you're pushing the electrons in many different directions. A thought is the same thing. So it requires a regularity of practice, as much as you can. And that means eating as well. It means sleeping as well. It means meditating as well. It means practice as well. And if your life is not like that, then you start in small doses, perhaps, getting some kind of systematic regularity going. Whenever you find a quiet place or a place with scenic beauty, that's the place to meditate also. Sit down for meditation. So despite regularity, despite having set hours, say, of meditation, when the mood takes you, take advantage of that also. And then shun the biological directives, desire, both for an outward desire for things or people or places and so on, and make Him, that is the Lord, your mainstay. That's the key. Making that your mainstay. You know, when we do the meditation workshops, one question that I ask up front is, so you meditate to some extent. Now, is it regularly? Is it every day? Many people say no. Then I say, well, why not? And the common answer is, I'm not in the mood. In other words, I don't see it as my priority. I don't see the divine as my priority because there are all kinds of things in life. And I can, meditation is secondary. If you withdraw your mind from the impermanent worldly objects, he goes on to say, external renunciation will come automatically. If you withdraw your mind from the impermanent worldly, how do you do that? Well, you reinterpret life. You reinterpret all these people and places and events and objects in a different way. And one of the ways Mary supplied by saying, okay, I looked at leaves, they were going brown, they were falling off, but that's not the end of it. Because actually there's a living entity there, and what I'm observing is completely impermanent. Birth, life, and death is a good thing to meditate on. The tree of life. Why? Because it is completely impermanent. It seems to have life, but the life is deeply instilled in it. It comes from beyond the tree as such. Even biologically, we can see that the tree's life depends primarily on the sun. Well, sun and water and all the other elements, but without the sun, there's no growth, there's no photosynthesis at all. Water is also necessary, no doubt. So, there is something that is other than the tree as the tree itself, which we call life, that enlivens everything. And when we look at the surface, we're used to seeing things in a different. For example, supposing we view all the people and places and events that we see as, let's say, take people as cartoon characters or as marionettes, puppets. Some years ago, we had a wonderful puppet show on Vivekananda, brought by with handmade puppets from Rajasthan. A beautiful, beautiful show with experienced marionettes. And so, very often we can think, well, we seem to be something like a puppet and holding the strings, not in a controlling way, but what we call the body, what is it? It is just an impermanent thing. It changes, it grows old, and the only thing that remains the same from when you were born to now is probably the eyes and the brain. Otherwise, everything else got changed. Every cell got changed, got renewed, got replaced. And so dwelling on these things will revalue the whole aspects of birth, life, death, individual identification, passport identification, personality, persona. That's why we do the Enneagram, to emphasize that what we call the personality that people take as a reality is just actually a persona, a personality. It's just a mask. And we can decide what mask to put on, and we can decide how to make the mask useful, but the point is it is a mask. Identifying with it is called ignorance. We have to get out of it. And we don't do it all of a sudden. If we could, that would be wonderful. But normally we do it in a progressive way, a kind way, a gentle way, and control the mind like we control an animal, like we control a horse. Gradually approach it from the side, making friends with it, stroking it a little bit, putting on a saddle if it's a horse, getting it used to that, making friends with it, feeding it from your hand until it's comfortable with you, and then you go and ride the thing in a masterful way. Now the question that is being asked here is, Maharaj, what is the meaning of the Vedantic saying Brahman alone is real and the world is unreal. And his reply goes like this. It means that the world we see is apparent and not real. In samadhi, the world disappears and one experiences uninterrupted bliss, similar to the joy one gets after deep sleep. The sages express their experiences of samadhi saying, Ananda, Ananda, bliss, bliss. They couldn't say anything else. In that state, there's no I or you. There's only Satchit Ananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss, absolute. He is with form and is also formless, and again is beyond form and formlessness. This is the perfect answer, of course. Succinct, much better than me waffling. Then another devotee asks, Maharaj, what is the proof of God's existence? That's a hugely important question, because today in the Western world, people assume that religion and science are opposites, and their understanding of science being intrinsically atheistic and materialistic is, where is the evidence for God? Well, his answer comes like this. The seers have said, that is, those who have experienced it, we have seen God, and if you follow this way, you will also see him. The master used to say, merely by saying, hemp, hemp, you will not be intoxicated. You must procure hemp, prepare it, take it, and then wait a little while. That's what I was saying earlier. Having taken the measures, you then wait a little while. Impatience has no place in this. Gradually, you also will get intoxicated. Merely by saying, God, God, you will not realize him. Practice disciplines and then wait for his grace. That's a very important part. Wait for his grace. You will see him in time. Then another important question, and then we'll end with this one. The devotee is asking, sometimes while practicing japam, the mind becomes blank. What causes that? And Maharaj says, Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, mentioned that this as an obstacle to concentration. Meditation is an uninterrupted flow of thought toward God. A beautiful, beautiful definition of meditation. When meditation ripens, the vision of God comes, and then comes samadhi. The current of bliss continues for a long time after samadhi. Some say it continues throughout one's life. Sri Chaitanya, he goes on, sent one of his disciples to Rai Ramananda. The disciple found him rolling in luxury. But as soon as Ramananda started talking about God, love overflowed from his heart. And there the conversation ends. That gives us a number of clues which contribute to the answers of 3 questions or observations that we have. Well, I hope that's useful to you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Right. Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday now.
You too.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace.
Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
All right, good.
Gracias.